accepting these core fundamental Jewish beliefs. So it's not enough that somebody on the streets is like, I'm a Jew, so put on tzitzis. So it's, okay, that's part of it. That's part of it, but it's the core belief system of the 13 principles of the Rambam. And therefore, even though the superstructure of these shiurim is how to teach this over, we can only do that with the foundations ourselves. That's why we're putting so much focus on these foundations. So we're up to the 10th foundation. And the 10th foundation is, Ani mamin be'emunah shleima, I have absolute crystal clear belief, Sha'boirei yizborach shmoi, that God yoidea kol ma'aseh b'nei adam, v'kol machshavoisam, that God knows all the actions of man and all of his thoughts. I'm 100% clear that God is in my mind. That mamish, God is in my mind. And he's aware of what I'm thinking about. And the question I want to begin with is principle number 11. Anybody know what principle number 11 is? I'll read it to you now. I believe with absolute crystal clear conviction that God is goymel toiv l'shomer mitzvoisav. God gives good to those that keep the mitzvahs, umanish la'ovre mitzvoisav, and gives a patch, an onish, for those that go against the mitzvahs. If I know that God is trustworthy to pay, it means there's mitzvahs that are in my mind. So doesn't it imply that he knows my thoughts? Why do I need these as two separate ikarim? I have absolute conviction that God knows every one of my thoughts and is aware of everything. And that God will give schar neinish. There's going to be reward, there's going to be punishment. Isn't the first one included in the second one? If he's going to pay off everything, it implies he knows what's going on. Was tut sich in der Welt. He knows what's happening in the world. So what does the 10th ikr, what is that adding? What is this adding to me? Okay, the answer to this is a bit nuanced. So that's why I said hold on to your tzitzis today. And if you have extra pairs, you can give them out to people. Because it's a bit deeper, but I think we can all do it. So I want to read you something from Moshe Shapiro, of blessed memory, is that this is what a person might think. So he says like this: people that do the mitzvahs of Hashem are called oisei ritzaynai. They do God's will. And people that go against God's will are called oivrei ritzaynai. Okay, either I'm doing God's will or I'm going against God's will. Okay. Now, and God will give schar if I do his will, and he'll give punishment if I don't. So he says a very deep point, and here it is. Yesh makom litoya litois. There's a place to make a mistake. Okay, what's the mistake? Since Hashem gives opportunity for a person to do things that are either for his will or against his will, maybe I would say that that thing that I'm doing that's going against his will is basically going outside of the entire system of creation. Meaning, creation as we know it is God's will. If you go against God's will, it's like I've left the rubric of creation. I'm now outside of God's will. I'm somehow out. Which means God's will is the creation. When I'm doing God's will, I'm like in the game. You know what I'm saying? I'm like in it. I'm in the game. If I go against God's will, it's like I'm out of the game. I'm not even a non-playable character. What, an NPC? I'm not even an NPC. I'm like out. I'm like clipped from the game. So you have no role in the game. You're not even in the game. Not an NPC. You're out of the game. So who thinks that? You could hear that. I could hear that. If I'm doing God's will, it says that Hashem created the world through his will. So if I'm doing the mitzvahs, I'm doing God's will. I'm in the game. I'm in the world.
Even if it's mitzvah, you're already in the game?
If I do one mitzvah, I'm in the game. If I start going against the mitzvahs, I'm like leaving the game.
But if you
I'm cutting off.
Mitzvahs, you do just a mitzvah or two.
Put your tefillin on every day, but nothing else.
So then I'm in the game. I'm in the game. But for the other things, I'm like leaving the game. All my other actions, it's like part of me is dislodging from reality. I could think that, right? So he says something very interesting. I could have made such a thought, but this thought, in order to correct this thought, comes the 10th of the core principles. Hashem knows everything that we're doing. Kol ma shenasa ba'olam, kol machshava, kol ziyah kol shu, everything. Hu chelek mehamisgeres shenikba ali de HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything that I do is in the game. Everything that I do is in the game. We'll see in a second from a famous Gemara in Avodah Zarah, 2 Gemaras. Everything I do is me in the game. So then what's the difference now between mitzvahs and averos? Kol ma shemichutz l'misgeres ein loy mitzias. Ha'olam ein hefker, ein afshara shetiyeh stia shel chut asayr mamash HaKadosh Baruch Hu rotza v'techanen bebriya hakol nimsa mishtale v'nichnas l'toich ha'misgeres. Yovoi im kein hashoyel. Im kach ma garua ba averish asisi. So if that's the case, that the 10th of the core principles is teaching me God is aware of everything and it's part of His plan. So then what's the problem? We took a few steps here. What's the problem? Maybe I could do an avera. Don't. Okay, I told you we had to take a few steps here. Step number 1, we have Ikr number 10, which is what? Who knows Ikr number 10? Who knows 10? I know. God knows all of our thoughts, all of our actions. What was principle number 11? Reward and punishment. Which I would have thought is like, I could have included God knows everything within reward and punishment. Okay, no, the 2. Why the 2? So then we began. I might have thought that when I do Hashem's will, I'm in the game. When I don't, I'm outside of it. I've left. No. Everything that's happening in the world is part of Ratzon Hashem. It's all within the game. Okay? Next step. If that's the case, a person could think, well, why can't I do Averis? Is this not, I'm doing something within the world of Hashem wanting it? So to this comes number 10. To this is the answer. Is that yes, everything that you do is going to be part of God's ultimate plan and destiny. The question is, are you going to be given reward for being a part of it or not? I'll explain it more when we see this Gemara. Im hadavar hazeh hu chelek me'abriya b'ma ani avarti ritzoynai. Hari hadavar hazeh gam kein mitztaref. Hatshuva lekach gam hi genuza be'ikar asiri. The answer to this, that when you're doing an avera, that you're going, even though you're part of the reality, it's going against Hashem's will. And to that I need to see a Gemara in Avodah Zarah first. So the Gemara says like this. There's amazing Gemaras here on Daf Nun Daled. Oh, here we go. Tanu Rabbanim, we learned in a Brisa. Shalom philosophin es hazakenim. There were certain philosophers that they came over to the rabbis, Baromi, while everybody was together hanging out in Rome. And they said an interesting question. Im Elokeichem ein ritzoyna ba'avodas koichavim. If your God does not want idol worship, seems to be pretty apparent just by opening up a chumash. It's basically everywhere. Mipnei ma eina mevatla. Why doesn't God just remove it from the world? What do you say? Interesting question. Come on, it says God hates idol worship, doesn't want idol worship. If God doesn't want it, just let him go and gegangen. Apparently he doesn't.
Then there'll be no opportunity for reward or punishment if God just got rid of everything bad.
Okay, that's very good. Natan Ezra, a Kohen.
I'm not sure which Rav I heard this from, the old, but the worst thing for humanity is thinking that nothing matters, being an atheist, thinking that there's no rules. Even within the thing of Avodah Zarah, there's still some sort of rules, and that people think that they're bound to something. That could arguably be closer to Ratzon Hashem than just being like what you said in the first thing, like totally out of the game altogether.
Okay. Thoughts?
I was thinking at the core, free will.
Free will, I think also very connected to free will.
I was thinking the same thing. You want to test us?
Okay, testing.
I think it needs to be it's just whether or not you're on the right side of it.
Okay, I mean, it needs to be there. Well, based on what we said before, is that going against, meaning it's not that there's God's world and then out. It's all within God's world. So then why is this here? If God doesn't want it, why is it here? So listen to what they said back. Amr lahem, ilu l'davar she'ena olam tzayrich loy, haya oivdin, harehu mevatla. So it's an interesting thing. What are the things that people are worshiping? Harehein oivdin l'chama, v'la levana, v'la koychavim, v'la mazalos. The things that you're talking about, are these things that are not necessary for the world? The rabbis answered back the philosophers. The things that you're talking about that people are worshiping, are these not things that the world needs? Well, what do they worship? Let's think about it. The sun, the moon, the stars, the constellations. So what? You want to just remove the sun? That's what you're proposing? Last time I checked, it's pretty good having a sun. Last time I checked, the moon's pretty important. Stars. Planets are pretty good, you know. Elon's got big plans. Let's see how it goes. But I'm saying, what's wrong with the constellations? So you're suggesting, the rabbis are telling the philosophers, we're not talking about things that people are worshiping that are not useful. They have a use. It's look how the people are relating to them. That was the problem. The thing itself is not a problem. What's the problem with the sun? Sun's great. Vitamin D. You think it's a vitamin, it's half vitamin, half hormone. You'll think about that. That's why when you get a lot of vitamin D, you feel like hormonally pumped up. Vitamin D is a mamish pump. It's a pump. You feel it. It's not like just getting vitamins. It's getting hormones. Very powerful, vitamin D. Yeah?
What about statues and stuff like that?
Okay, stone is not a good thing. I like having a house built out of stone myself. Just get rid of stones. Yeah, forget that. Mountains, constellations. Let's just mavatal everything. So the rabbis are saying back, you thinking these are things that people don't use? So if so, abed oilam. So what are we going to do? We're going to destroy the entire world. Mipnei ashoitim, listen to the words, because of these fools. Because there are fools that actually put their hope and their trust in the idols. Ella, this is the important part of it. Ha'olam kiminhagoi noyeg. The world runs and continues to move. The shoitim and the fools that relate to God's world in such a way, shekilkalu asidim liten esadin. In the end, they will give their judgment. Meaning, the world has a mission. The world is going in a certain direction. It's that me now, from first player shooter perspective, that's how it is, right? First player, I'm moving through this world. I see sun, moon, stars, constellations. how am I now to relate to this thing? So whether I relate to it in a positive way, or God forbid a person relates to it in a negative way, will the sun still be here? Will the moon still be here? Is there a reason to say we should remove it from the world? Of course not. The world will continue to move and develop. Olam keminhaga noeg. But really, where's the judgment going to be on me, the first person shooter? How I was relating to this part of the world. Okay? Gemara number 2. You guys ready for this Gemara? There's a famous Gemara right at the beginning of Avodah Zarah. One of my favorites. Sorry, forgive me a second. Oh. There's so much here. Okay, so the Gemara here is speaking about, this is the prophetic Gemara, it's speaking about in the end of days that Hashem, when Hashem returns to his throne, right now when we say that the Shechina is in Gullus, we mean the king is, so to speak, not revealed in the world. But when Mashiach comes, B'karov, B'ezrat Hashem, very soon, and we see God's dominion fill the world once again. The whole world will relate and see that God is the king, the Melech Malchei Malachim, the King of Kings. When that day happens, Hashem says, I will bring all the nations before me, and I will ask people, how did you help bring about human destiny? How did you help bring about the world to its perfection? I want to give reward. So all the nations of the world are going to come forth, long live the king! And Hashem is going to speak to them and ask what they did. So it starts going through, it's very fascinating, an amazing Gemara. It starts going through who did what and what they're going to say. So it says like this, Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'maya saktem. He's going to ask them, what were you involved in? So who first comes, by the way? Miyan nichnusa lefan of Malchus Roimi Techila. The first one that comes is going to be Rome, the West. And Hashem is going to ask them, what did you do? It's interesting, the Gemara says, that Lasad Lavai Mevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sefer Torah Meinicha B'cheikoi. Hashem is going to bring a Sefer Torah, so to speak, and put it in his lap. Obviously, this is not talking about anything physical. But Hashem is going to hold on to a Sefer Torah, the lap being like in a very beloved, endearing way. And he's going to say, Misha asak ba yavoi v'yitel scharai. Whoever was involved in this, i.e., in my Torah, come forth and I want to give you reward. So miyan miskabtzim uboim oivdei akum ve'irbuvia. So it says immediately all of the nations of the world are going to come like Birbuvia. They're all going to be like rushing to talk to God. Shenemar kol hagoyim nikbetzu yachtov. They're all going to run over. People always love Isaiah. This is Isaiah 43. They're all going to run over. All the nations are going to come to God. Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Al tikansu lefana birbuvia. Do not come to me all mixed together. We've got time. Let's go one by one. Elatikanes kol uma ve'uma v'soifreya. Every single nation should come, and their leaders, everyone should come, and let's go in order. Miyad nichnas lefanav malchus roimi betchila. So the first one that came was Rome. Amar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Hashem says, B'maya saktem. So, what were you involved in? Okay, I have to leave today on a cliffhanger. I know, it's good. This is a good Gemara. Okay? It's a great way to come tomorrow. So, what did we learn today? Just in summary. We learned about the 10th and the 11th Iker of the Rambam. We said it seems that the 10th is included in the 11th. We explained a thought that a person could have, which is that if I'm doing Ritzainai, I'm an Oisei Ritzainai, that I'm in the rubric, I'm in the matrix of real life, not the false matrix, the actual world as we know it. But God forbid a person not is outside of that. So we said, no, everything is inside of God's world. So if so, a person could have a thought, well then maybe I could do an Avera. Isn't that also in God's world, God forbid? And there were evil people that thought like that, like Shabbatai Tzvi, Yamach Shemo. So we said that this Iker is going to come to deliver the message of how a person could be in Hashem's world. The world will continue, and the only thing that where does he exist as a first player shooter is, am I connecting to the world in a positive way, or am I connecting to the world not in a positive way? And God knows that. You're always in Hashem's world, but then the question will be, what were your intentions while you were connected in the world? And that was the Gemara we saw, which is that the philosophers in Rome came to the rabbis and they said, so if God hates Avodah Zarah, why doesn't he just take it out of the world? And what was the answer? It has a place in God's world. It's only how people relate to it that's the problem. So now the next Gemara we're seeing, and this is where it's really going to be the punchline, is now in the end of days, when all the nations of the world are coming to Hashem, and Hashem is saying, so how did you help bring the Torah to its great fulfillment? And everyone's going to say, of course we helped. And they're all going to start listing all the things that they did. And you're going to see Hashem's response to the nations of the world. And the big punchline at the end is going to be, humanity was involved in God's world, but what were they thinking about when they were doing it? And to this comes the 10th of the Rambam's principles, is that God is fully aware of your intention in your involvement in the world, and you're not going to be able to come along later and say, no, but I helped in a whole bunch of ways. Did you have that in mind? It's true that the world was moving in a certain way, but what was your conscious thought? What were you thinking about as the world was moving in those ways? My dear friends, we should be zochet to have good thoughts. Leiv tahor barali lakim. For ruach nachon chadesh bekirbi. We should have pure thoughts. We should have pure intention. And with that, to be able to be mekayim all the 13 principles. And that when we see our friends on the street and they say, I'm a Yid, say, okay, let's talk about the Rambam together. We should be zochet to this bekarav amen ve'amen. Amen. Call to tomorrow, 3:15.